Welcome back to Natix Rainmakers Laboratory. This is Module 2.4, the continuation and hopefully the completion here of time management and goal setting. So we left off with our cautionary tale the other day in regards to the monkeys playing around and not necessarily understanding, having the big victory celebration of all the great numbers when turns out they actually had it completely opposite. They were headed in the wrong direction. It really goes to show the power of production dynamics and having daily goals and metrics that can actually do that. And if you pull away one big thing here from Module 2 as we go through this, is the importance of metrics and the importance of tracking the things that matter. It isn't just about revenue. Revenue is super important, don't get me wrong. But being able to peel the onion back a couple extra layers, that's really where you can find success much easier, because it's a heck of a lot easier to know where you stand if you can track that stuff on a daily basis. So we're going to get going with the rest of the module in regards to time management. So let's get started. So as we get into time management, one of the cool things about this course and kind of where things were going with this is that they build on each other. We've been talking and kind of telling this tale, and we're getting to be good friends, and we've got obviously a couple more modules to go through that we're going to become even better. So as we get more and more familiar with the concepts and the topics, they turn into building blocks. And so now that we have your USP in place and you understand production dynamics, it's time to start building on these skills. So if you recall from the previous module there, talking in regards to production dynamics review, identifying what tasks are most important to your success. And think in general terms, not specific actions. So a good example here, when we talk about Jenny Smith, the realtor, when you start talking about time blocks, there isn't a time block that you'd label called Jenny Smith. You'd call that time block realtor calls. And the idea is that you're trying to create reoccurring events, not a list of to-dos for the day, but to-dos forever, or to-dos for forever. The idea is that this thing, when you're building it together, and I'll focus on this in about a second, calling them puzzle pieces, but the idea behind this is that you're creating time blocks or time events that are critical to your success. So when you start talking about realtor calls or loan officer calls or follow-ups or spending time inside your business, one of the time blocks that you should actually have is a time block for blocking out events, so kind of a planning to plan. Some tips for you here: time blocks should have a maximum time event of 3 hours. And the reason why I say that, it's real easy in thinking that you're doing a great job if you put Monday through Friday 9 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock at night, and you say, okay, I've got sales calls or I've got working. Those aren't necessarily great events, because no one can stay focused for a full 8 hours in one event. I've actually found that it's better to actually have 60 to 90 minute time blocks, because the idea behind this is that you want to be able to hyper focus in on an activity. We've already talked about turning off the email notifications so you don't get sucked into email, into the black hole of email. So what you want to do is you want to be able to have these time blocks set up to say, okay, here's the next time block. I'm working on this for the next 90 minutes. Or I'm going to be out making sales calls in this part of the city, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But that may be a 3-hour block of time. And so you orchestrate it so these events happen naturally. And so you can say, okay, I'm going to work on this information, or I'm going to work on building this lead list or this marketing campaign, but I'm only going to do it for 90 minutes. And then after that 90 minutes, you move on to the next thing. When you talk about this, time blocking, I recommend that people do it typically on Friday afternoons. So in the sales world, that tends to be when things are the slowest for you. And I realize I'm painting kind of a broad stroke here, and if you're an escrow person, you're going to look at me all crazy and say, are you kidding? Friday afternoons are my busiest time. Well, for sales folks, historically or typically, it isn't a busy time because realtors are at closings, or realtors are already focusing in on the weekends, or loan officers are already out, at the bars, whatever. But pick a time when it's typically slow for you, and you should block out 60 to 90 minutes for this event. The idea behind it, if you're doing this the Friday before, you want to think about what you need to accomplish in the following week. And this is where having those different goals helps you, because it really turns into this puzzle. So you're going to have a set number of blocks that need to happen almost every or most weeks. And make sure you have them written down somewhere. When I first started doing this, I actually had just a 3x5 index card. And I had kind of my non-negotiable time blocks. And these were events that absolutely needed to happen. So if it were for me and I was getting ready to hit the streets, that I knew that I was going to have to be in this part of the city, say the north side of the city, the south side of the city, the east and west side of the cities, okay? Those were 4 non-negotiable time blocks that ensured that I was going to be out in the streets for 4 time blocks. I had, admin follow-up. I had built-in stuff where I could, actually have admin time to do stuff. If I had a marketing campaign that I needed to get out the door, I could block that in. I could look at my week and say, okay, this is what I've got going. Here's what I've got coming next. By starting to block out time, look at your calendar for a good 10, 15 minutes. Really take a look at it and say, okay, what do I need to accomplish? And you're looking at a puzzle. And the idea is that you're trying to move around these puzzle pieces to make the most effective use of your time. This is one of those things, the concept of time is, boy, it's your most valuable asset, guys. And it must be protected at all costs. Everyone wakes up with 24 hours in a day. Doesn't matter how much you make or how little you make, what your job title is, everyone has the same amount of time. And when you're blocking out meetings, here's another cool tip. Start using your Outlook calendar for invites. So if you're going to meet with, if you remember Jenny Smith, the realtor I was just talking about, and you're going to have coffee with her over at Starbucks, send a calendar invite to that person too. So don't just show up there at Starbucks. Send out a calendar invite, because it accomplishes a couple things. First off, it confirms that they're going to be there. If they accept the invitation, it's going to populate on their calendar. And so the idea behind this thing is you want to respect their time as well. Just like you want them to respect your time. I can't tell you the number of times that before I started doing this this exercise, I'd show up at a meeting and they would be a no-show. Or the idea behind it is you want to, by planning your day around specific and different events, if you have let's just say that she works over on the west side of the city, and you're going to be doing your call route on the west side, and inside that call route you block out 30 minutes or 60 minutes, whatever, to meet with this realtor. If they blow you off, and stuff like that's going to happen. I mean, life is going to happen. We have to be realistic about it. Don't have it be that you lose a whole half day. If you're going to be over on the east side of the city, and you've got a coffee appointment on the west side of the city, don't allow yourself to do that. That's not a good use of your time. Hopefully that comment makes sense to you. Now, moving forward, I want to warn you about time vampires. Now, time vampires come in a bunch of shapes and sizes. You're going to know them as non-producers who just want to talk. Most of the time, if you're talking about real estate agents, and again, I'm painting people with a rather large brush here, but most of the most successful realtors that I come across don't spend a whole lot of time in the office. They just don't. Unless they've got huge teams or they become more of a manager. But when you look at realtors as a rule, The most successful ones don't spend a whole lot of time in the office. So if you're calling on a realtor's office and you walk into the broker shop and there's a bunch of realtors just standing around the coffee pot, guys, those guys are time vampires. All they want to do is just sit and chat with you. They don't have a ton of business to offer. They're going to talk your ear off and talk to the moon as far as, hey, you know what, let's just, sit and chat about stuff. Or they've got all these delusions of grandeur, but they don't do anything. Fish where the fish are, folks. That's a great marketing lesson. Fish where the fish are. They're not going to be in that office in most cases. Another time vampire are producers who just want to see you. They're just walking. You can just tell they're never going to use you. Regardless of the value premise that you can bring to the table. Those guys, you don't spend a whole lot of time with those guys. Would-be clients who don't respect your time. That one infuriates me. You send the calendar invite, you do your job right, and they just never show up. Those are one of those ones that it's just you just got to scratch your head and say, okay, I haven't created enough value. And this is how I used to tell it to myself, is that I just haven't created enough value for them to really want to see me. So I turned it back on my own, back to me and said, okay, I just need to create more value for these guys. So another cool thing, and I'm going to experiment with this one a little bit. If I have the ability to zoom in on this one, I'm going to do it so you can kind of see it. But in laying out a schedule, I used to have my employees share it with me, and I still do that today. So, here at Natick, I have all of my salespeople share their calendars with me. And it's not so much that I want to micromanage their day, but I want to ensure that they're practicing what we preach. I still do this exercise every Friday. If you look at my calendar, you'll see a time block on there on Friday afternoons. I've got 2 set time blocks that are reoccurring events for me. They happen on Friday afternoons. One is planning my next week. The other one is my expense report. Those are 2 things that just always fall on Friday afternoons for me. That's typically my slow time. And then I also do another time block for me is calendar reviews. I'll go and I'll spot check stuff. And you should be doing the same type of thing. So in this example here, I have one of my employees just kind of shared their calendar with me, and this is what they did. So they were able to populate their time so I could see what was going on, and they were believing what we were preaching. So that's a really good exercise to share your calendars, even with each other, to hold each other accountable for stuff. You might want to say, hey, I don't want to do this, or I don't want to share my calendar. Well, get over yourself. The best way to be successful is to hold yourself accountable with someone else. And this is why, as I'm recording this, it's almost the beginning of 2017, and physical fitness is going to be all the rage for the next, probably 2 months before people get tired of going to the gym. And a good way to be able to help hold yourself accountable is to get a workout buddy. Well, this is the same kind of concept here, guys. If you have someone that you're sharing a calendar with, it gives you that opportunity to say, okay, what are you doing? And hold yourself accountable, but through somebody else's eyes. That's a really, really cool tip. So earlier I had talked about having an appointment on the west side or over on the east side or something like that. I want to cover the concept of milk routes and call routes. And as you get into this, and you'll see where I'm going with this thing here, a milk route is, if in the old days when delivery trucks used to deliver milk, the milk truck would load their stuff up and they would go from house to house in a specific neighborhood, and they would deliver the milk. And then when they were out, they would go and refill their truck, and then they would head to a different part of the city. The idea is the same here, that you break down your sales routes into manageable locations. So you heard me earlier talking about east side, west side, whatever. The idea is that you can break into a market, just like the military lands at a beachhead, and they try to establish a beachhead. So it might be 1 or 2 realtors or 1 or 2 loan officers in a specific part of the city. That's your beachhead. That's where you start things going off. And as you continue to build on that, you expand it out and say, okay, who else is in that territory that I can go after? And then once you have that one fleshed out, the number of stops that you do in a day is kind of dependent on you. If you're going, I have sales folks that can go see, 20 plus folks in a day. I have other folks that can see 2 or see 3 because the other territory is so much more spread out. But the idea is that they establish a beachhead and then they go and exploit it. And then when they got that one fleshed out enough, they establish the next beachhead. The goal here is to have your routes that get plugged into your time blocks on your calendar. So then it turns into a time block to say West Side offices or West Side sales calls or West Side sales route, North Side sales route, or if it's different cities, whatever you want to insert in there. But that becomes this reoccurring event. Remember how I said that these are reoccurring events that become non-negotiable time blocks for you. The concept here is that you're building that puzzle, right? You're putting the puzzle pieces together, and the different milk routes or call routes, establish that for you. There's a great story about, when you talk about milk routes. First, step 1, be on time. There's a great story about the 2 and 6 football team, and boy, these guys. I just recently moved to Chicago, and so I get to embrace the beloved Chicago Bears, who are, I think, going to be 3-13 by the time things are done. Well, this is the 2 and 6 football team, and these guys are just as bad. The idea behind this team is that they couldn't run a play to save their life, and you're going to ask yourself, well, how did they get to 2 and 6? How did they get 2 wins in a season if they couldn't, if they never snapped a ball right or they got every play wrong? How'd they win 2 games? Well, the 2 games they won by forfeit because the whole team was there on time and the other team didn't show up. So that's a cool little lesson about the 2 and 6 football team. Some other things that you want to be able to consider as you're doing your milk routes: turn off your phone or silence or vibrate it. One of the things that used to be a big pet peeve of mine is don't put your stuff on their desk. It's one of those things that you're not that familiar where you start dropping stuff off on on their desk. As you're in the office, look for dry erase boards. I don't think I've ever seen a shop that doesn't necessarily have a dry erase board. Look to see how busy they are. How do those guys look? Look at the offices. Are there files everywhere, or is it just completely neat and you can just tell nothing is happening? Then you got to do one of the hardest things that I've ever asked a salesperson to do: shut up and listen. This is not your time. The time when they're talking isn't your time to figure out what to say next. Understand. Remember the 7 habits. Seek first to understand, then be understood. Shut up and listen, guys. As we continue to go through this exercise, you're going to see this over and over and over. Well, it looks like we had a little bit of technical difficulty there. So as I pause that one and move forward here. So, geez, look at this stuff. Good thing we're all familiar now. So moving forward, the same concept is true with call routes. Call routes are essentially the exact same premise of a milk route, but on the phone. It's going to be easier to do the same task over and over rather than switching gears based on who you're talking to. And here's what I mean by this. Is that if you're calling new prospects, block that time out and call it and label it new prospect calls. Your mind can actually get sharper as you do the same task over and over. It's called muscle memory. The idea behind this is that if you're calling new sales prospects, it's going to be easier to do that same prospecting call over and over than calling a prospect, then calling your best account, and then calling accounts you lost 3 months ago. Because you've got different things that you're going to want to say to each one of those folks. And so at the end of the day, if you can continue to build on something, it's almost like a factory or assembly line, that if you do the same thing over and over, you're going to become more proficient at it, and that the first call you make is going to be it's going to be harder compared to the last call you make, where if you're doing the same thing and your final call is going to be a stroke of brilliance because you've gone through this and your mind has been conditioned to say certain things and talk a certain way. The concept here, obviously it's going to be easier to do the same task over and over rather than switching gears based on who you're talking to. Now, in the next, spoiler alert, for the next module, we're going to be talking about CRM. So I'll save a lot of that for the next module. But whatever CRM you're using, make sure you have the ability to create call routes. And like I said, we'll discuss this later in CRM. But here's another. Here's a screenshot of Act. This is an older version, obviously. But you can see all the different call routes that I had established. And inside the call routes, you had different contacts. So I'll see if I can't highlight that during I'll clean this up in post, as they say. But I wanted to give that example to you, is to say here's one section here of all the different call routes, and then inside each one of those call routes, you actually have the folks that you're talking to. So we're going to wrap things up here today. I'm going to give you some quick tips and homework assignments. First off, pro tip number 1, there's no such thing as multitasking. One of the things that you can switch tasks, and really the illusion of multitasking is just that, it's an illusion. You can't do 2 different things at the same time. Your brain can't absorb it. So the idea is that you can focus on one thing and then switch attention to something else and then switch it back to something else. But as you're going back and forth, there's this dead time in your own mind. Try to avoid multitasking, or that premise of multitasking. We already talked about the importance of turning off email notifications. Another cool tip is you're doing your calendar. There's a website out there called National Calendar Day, and it's a lesson in advanced planning. The idea is that certain days of the year have like National Donut Day or National whatever day or Hug Your Cat Day, whatever they are. And we're going to talk about that one in CRM a little bit more for the next module. But I wanted to share those couple of quick tips with you. Next big one, using your car as a classroom. As sales folks, we have a lot of windshield time. One of the cool things that I've done is take a good chunk of my library and have purchased the audio versions of the book, or iPods. And I have a list of my top 25 books that I read. Here, 3 of them here: The 7 Habits, Good to Great, The Tipping Point. These are all really cool books that I also have in audio. So if I'm in the car, I can actually, rather than just listening to the radio, I can plug something in and actually use that time to my advantage. I'm also a big fan of podcasting. 3 of them that have been pretty good staples for me. I Love Marketing is a dynamite podcast. These guys have been doing it for a long time. Small Business, Big Marketing. The guys are pretty funny Aussie. Guys from Australia does a really cool job with that. 6 Pixels of Separation is a little bit more tech oriented, but another really cool podcast. Duct Tape Marketing, John Jantz puts on another great one as well. So those are a couple of things in regards to podcasting. Another one of my favorite sites, bookssshouldbefree.com. You don't always need to read business books. I try to take in a couple of biographies as well. And a lot of those biographies can be found on audio free of charge. So bookssshouldbefree.com is another cool plug for those things there. Industry involvement. As we go through this thing, and guys, I promise, I said I'd be wrapping this thing up. I got about another 2 minutes or so. Can be both great and industry involvement can be both great and horrible at the same time. So just be careful with where you decide to give your time. Same thing, same concept here. Block out the time. Be very careful of the time vampires. There are associations out there that will just take every moment that you give to them, and you won't get anything back. I found it best to try to be, as far as industry involvement, you can belong to several different organizations. But I tend to pick, 1 or 2 where I get to be a leader or hold a leadership role inside there. And the rest, you're just a member showing up. So be careful with that thing there. Homework. Okay, wrapping things up for sure now, guys. As we talk about production dynamics, what are the 3 or 4 goals that you are going to measure? What specific things are you going to track? So creating your production dynamics, guys. Create homework assignment number 2, create your time blocks. Figure out what those non-negotiable time blocks are and start getting yourself into the habit of creating time blocks in your schedule. Finally, the third book in the series, read Swim with the Sharks Without Being Eaten Alive. I picked this book up, no kidding guys, 25 years ago, and it's been a staple in my life. But this is really one of those cool ones for me, got me onto the premise of CRM. So enjoy that one. I hope you've enjoyed 7 Habits. Circle back and read that one again to allow you time to really go through and do the exercises that the 7 Habits were talking about. So until then, folks, have a great day, and we will talk with you all soon. Take care.